Longing, Rusted, Furnace, Daybreak, 17, Benign, 9, Homecoming, 1, Freight Car.
Have I been activated? Did that activate me?
I mean, if you're the Winter Soldier, I
Am
guess
I
it would
am I a
have.
Russian spy?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, and undercover CIA operatives, welcome back to the Rabbit Hole Podcast, where we do mediocre research and give our unwanted opinion about a topic that you probably don't care about. Joined by my lovely co-hosts, one who's not wearing pants. I'll let you guess on that one. This week, we're going to do a deep dive into some um, used to be top secret CIA government operations. Something that men who stare at goats type stuff. So yeah,
Yeah, I'm excited. I think really where we should start off this is kind of just the basis um, of what made our government start looking at these programs. Um, and I don't know how much you guys know about that, but I guess since ancient history is my kind of thing, I can give you a 30-second what got us interested. So during World War II, when we started taking over Germany, we started when we went to Dachau, when we went to Auschwitz, we went to all these places. We started noticing all these awful things the Germans were doing. But then we started noticing also what the Gestapo was doing, and they were trying to use these scientific techniques to get an intelligence advantage on their enemies. So at that time, the CIA was the OSS, and it was underneath the Department of War. And so the OSS started looking at that, and then as we started going into the Korean War, and we were worried about our soldiers being brainwashed, they were like, "Oh, we need to really start looking at this on our end." So, Tristan, do you want to take it from there, where our end kind of starts?
yeah. So a couple things on that. The OSS um, was technically not a military asset. It was
Mm-hmm.
a government asset. So men that were employed by the OSS and were overseas in Europe conducting these operations for the OSS were technically civilians. So the
Yeah,
rules of war did not apply to them. So they were able to do some more shady kinds of things, stuff that you kind of think of the CIA doing in the first place, honestly.
kind
But
of laid the
that just
groundwork.
kind of gives you a background into the OSS. They were known to dress in because back then, even though in World War II we didn't do the gentlemanly warfare type thing where
Mm-hmm.
we go out and shake hands on the battlefield beforehand and line up on two sides and fire muskets at each other, we still had a type of like respect
Code of
for the people
conduct.
we were fighting. Yeah, so you wore uniforms and treated prisoners with respect and stuff like that. The OSS didn't do that. They wore civilian attire and conducted operations kind of underground and undercover.
Right. They worked a
But
lot with the French
just to,
resistance, right?
yeah, the French and Polish
Yeah.
resistance they worked a lot with.
Kind of a lot of
But
early Green
that
Beret
kind of gives you a
stuff.
background on them. But yeah, I mean, in a sense,
Sowing
yeah.
dissent and training
Uh-huh.
guerrilla fighters.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Intelligence type work, I
Mm-hmm.
guess. That was their thing. So, anyways, I'm going to fast forward kind of up to 1953. Um, the director of the CIA is a man named Alan Dulles,
Mm-hmm.
who was in the OSS. Um, I believe. Let me double check that just to make sure, but I'm pretty positive he
Yeah,
was.
Dulles was a
Yeah, he was in the OSS and he operated out of Bern, Switzerland in World War II.
yeah.
So, Alan Dulles is the director of the CIA in 1953 when they begin a project called MK Ultra.
Mm-hmm.
If you've never heard of MK Ultra, it is the CIA's mind control experiment. Um, and there's one particular character that is where the conspiracy theory behind this lies. But MK Ultra itself, as a program and as an operation, um, is real. It did happen. It's declassified now.
Mhm.
You can actually get on CIA.gov and look at some of their unclassified documents, and there's tons and tons and tons of them about MK Ultra.
Yeah.
I have one pulled up right now that was written for public affairs staff um, to give to the uh, CBS News Network
What was
on
the
the
date on
program
that?
60 Minutes.
7 to 8.
This one's December 23rd, 1984.
Okay. So, but that's still early MK Ultra coming out. Like
Yeah,
that's around Iran Contra and MK Ultra first coming out. So
yeah. MK Ultra. I mean, so MK Ultra lasted from 1953 all the way up until I believe 1971 or two, something like that.
yeah, early to mid 70s.
And it was a super classified secret operation. The CIA and the government did not want people knowing about MK Ultra because it was kind of wacky, right? I mean, we were
Yeah, we were doing some shady
attempting
things,
to mind control people. Yeah.
and not only
So to give
in the
you
U.S. but also MK Ultra had there's a huge descent of or population of people in Canada who were controlled under the MK Ultra program, and ended up
Yes.
suing the CIA in the 90s over
yes,
it.
there's tons of civil lawsuits that went into it. Some of them are actually connected to Martin Luther King
Yeah.
and his assassination. But anyways, MK Ultra. So I keep saying mind control and all that stuff. It wasn't like we brought people into, or this I say we. It wasn't like the CIA brought people into rooms and was like dangling a clock watch or
Right.
what's that called? Clock
Yeah,
watch.
hypnotize them.
A
Yeah.
pocket watch in front of them
Yeah.
or whatever, trying to hypnotize them, or
Yeah.
it was um, LSD in the 50s and 60s. LSD became the popular drug, I guess, and that's kind of what they used to. They would give it to individuals and dose individuals up on LSD and use that as kind of a way to manipulate them, I guess,
Yeah.
into doing what they want. Because LSD kind of over a period of time will fry your brain. It'll like completely ruin the transmitters and the signal in your brain.
In early usage, they thought it was actually a true serum because it made people just have verbal diarrhea and just spit stuff out.
Yeah, and well, that's the thing is that this is LSD in the 50s. This
Right.
isn't LSD now. I
Yeah.
mean, LSD is a chemical thing. Science has come a long way, and LSD now still dangerous. It's still a drug, but it's a lot safer than it was back then. I'm sure.
Oh,
Back
yeah,
then, I'm sure it was
definitely.
just like a chemical compound of who knows what that would turn you into a friggin' flapjack. But there's a sub project of MK Ultra called Operation Midnight Climax, and it was established in 1954 by a man named Sidney Gottlieb. He was a chemist.
Let's just
that
pause for a
was,
second. Hold on, let's pause for a second. The operation is literally named Midnight Climax. Okay,
Yeah,
I want the
and
whole
you'll see
audience
why
to
here
hear
shortly. Don't.
Midnight Climax before we tell you what the operation was. All right, continue, good sir.
Yeah. Okay. So Operation Midnight Climax was established in 1954 by a chemist who was in the employment of the CIA named Sidney Gottlieb. And
What was
Mr.
his name? I'm
Gottlieb,
sorry. You had some feedback there for a second.
Large turned Sidney Gottlieb.
Okay.
Did you catch that? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we're back now.
Yeah,
There was some kind
sorry,
of
my
there was some kind of
connection, my
delay there
connection
for a
kind of
second.
dropped there for a second. Okay. Anyways, so Sidney Gottlieb set up a web of CIA-run safe houses in San Francisco, New York City, and Toronto, Canada. And these safe houses were turned into brothels, basically, where prostitutes who were paid by the CIA would target specific men and bring in these specific men, or the CIA themselves would bring these men there and be like, "Oh, hey, we got you this gift," kind of thing. Like, you're at a safe house now. Enjoy your time with this chick. Anyways, so that's where the Midnight Climax name kind of comes from. Is so men would be brought into these brothels, and they would be dosed with LSD unknowingly. You can just they would slip it into a drink, or line it with on a cigarette or a cigar or whatever, and they would dose these dudes up on LSD, and there would be one-way mirrors in the room where, I don't know if you've seen the movie Night at the El Royale.
Yeah.
How they have that one-way mirror in the basement or whatever. That's kind of the setup that would be going on. There would be a one-way mirror where CIA operatives could sit behind, and the whole room would be bugged and everything like that, and they could watch and listen to these men who were dosed up on LSD, who were in the comfort of a woman. I mean,
And didn't know they
would
were
just
being watched.
spill the beans, Yeah, they had no idea. They thought they were safe. They were
Yeah.
they were in a brothel. What CIA operative's going to be in a brothel? When you think of CIA, FBI, those types of dudes, you think of them as kind of a higher class individual who's not going
Right.
to go into an
Respectable.
establishment like that. When really they were the ones that set up the establishment in the first place.
They owned the brothel.
Yeah. So that's MK Ultra Operation Midnight Climax. Kind of the rundown of what those things actually were. Now, to dive into the conspiracy part of it, we talk about Charles Manson.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm talking a lot on this one, and if anybody gets sick of me or has any questions, just cut me off. I'm pulling a Tyler. But
we'll jump in there. Don't worry. Now, hold on. I will jump in there real quick and tell something before we get too far ahead into the conspiracy side of this. One thing you have to think about when we start thinking about the CIA doing all this crazy stuff that seems like completely outlandish is the world that we were in at the time. Now, the CIA is an executive branch. That means it is completely beholden of the president, essentially, right? So, like, the executive branch has power over the executive agencies, like the CIA, the FBI, etc. So, whenever you have the late 40s, early 50s, we were really worried about the Soviets, right? We're worried about the Soviets creating something coming in. There was a movie released. It was first a book in 1959 and then a movie in 62 called The Manchurian Candidate. And it's actually said that, the CIA director, I just completely went blank on his name. Dulles was obsessed with The Manchurian Candidate and was concerned about that kind of situation, which was a movie where a foreign agent a U.S. soldier got brainwashed when he was a POW and then turned into a politician in the U.S. as like a Trojan horse situation. So Dulles was obsessed with something like that happening. So he was trying to get ahead of the Soviets with chemical balances like LSD and things like that to beat them to that situation. So while it might seem like you might be there sitting there going, why in the hell is the CIA running a brothel in San Francisco? Where their methodology was definitely strayed and askew, their concerns were valid. So, but they did end up creating, like Tristan's about to tell you, some of the worst people that our country's known for the past 50 years came out of MK Ultra.
Well, so this this actually the act of everything they did in MK Ultra, didn't it directly violate like the Geneva Convention?
Oh yeah, 100%.
I don't know.
The
Just like
the Canadians, especially with the Canadians,
well,
that
they even
they
yeah,
experimented
so they
on.
even experimented
Because that's a
on
foreign
Canadians.
citizen.
hmm
So that's
Yeah, that's an act
technically
of war.
yeah,
Technically, yeah.
But it's
technically
using,
yeah.
but even then using chemicals on your own
Mhm.
citizens type
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah, you know,
I just-
and so there's a fine line here. So parts of MK Ultra operated within the prison system. Within the prison system, which Tristan's going to tell you about in just a second, I won't take too much of his thunder there. Within the prison system, there might have been a little bit more leeway for them to do things because they were offering commuted sentences and things like that in exchange for it.
More
But on
voluntary
the
thing.
general populace, like Operation Midnight Climax and Operation Bluebird, which was what the Canadians or what a psychiatrist was running out of Canada in Montreal, those were completely against any international code of law that we have, as far as humane treatment, torture, all of that. They definitely violated that. The prison system, that's kind of back and forth on what was actually violated there. But to answer your question, if I did.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to get that out there, that, like, just the seriousness of
Yeah,
like this is something that happened. I mean, it's proven that it's happened. Like it's out
100%,
there.
yeah.
And
CIA has admitted they did it.
like our government was doing that, and like, hey,
I mean, think of nowadays how upset people get at the thought of the government like looking at you through your webcam
Mm-hmm.
or your phone camera or listening into your conversations.
Which they do.
Imagine if they were bringing you into a brothel, tricking you into having sex with a woman, and dosing you up on LSD.
And then recording it and using it as leverage.
Yeah, that's
'Cause
a
you're a
whole new
political-
level of privacy invasion. I
Yeah.
mean, like,
that's just
yeah,
a
it's insane.
Saturday afternoon for.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
the CIA, it is
So-
just a Saturday afternoon. These are have you guys seen the Snowden movie on Netflix that talks about
Yeah.
Edward Snowden's what he actually had to do? Man, like, okay, I will sidebar. I will tell you in 2013, 2014, I definitely was not as open-minded as I am now in a lot of those things, and I would have just blatantly labeled Snowden a traitor. But now, man's a goddamn patriot. I'm sorry. All right, Tristan, floor is yours.
Absolutely. I don't know if anybody heard me crack that cold one open earlier, but we're not sponsored by Bud Light. And if anybody's out there listening,
But we are sponsored by Threadweird. You can go to threadweird.com or just Google Threadweird, and it's the first one that pops up. Use the code Rabbit Hole, and you can get 10% off all kinds of. Actually, I yesterday all day I was wearing my Bigfoot leading a unicorn shirt.
What'd you say that was? Threadweird?
Threadweird.com.
T-
Yeah.
THREADWEIRD.
D. Yeah. Period. COM, and then
Just found out
Rabbit
I-
Hole.
Found out I might not know how to spell
Can't
weird.
spell.
All right, Tristan.
Obviously, we're
Just-
sophisticated individuals.
Believe everything we say.
Anyways.
Because at least one of us went to college.
None of our brain power goes to spelling. It all goes into this. So
It all
that's
goes
what
to
you can
conspiracy
believe.
theories.
Anyways, I guess before we strayed off topic a little bit here, what do I want to get back onto? Oh yeah, so yeah, you're right. The Soviets were doing this kind of thing because they don't really believe in the same type of rights and stuff that we do. They were doing this thing to their citizens. There's d- definitely rumors of the Chinese doing it to their people
Hmm.
and POWs, the Vietnamese, which comes a little later, obviously,
Yeah.
but and the
The Koreans for sure. Yeah.
Koreans, the Japanese in World War II, the Germans in World War II. Um, Even though it sounds far-fetched, there is evidence of many people trying to. Just think if one of the three of us was in a place of power. I mean, the type of crazy shit that we believe in, um, the kinds of things that the kinds of experiments that we could conduct. I mean, it, so
CJB
if you
building a
get
monument in
someone,
Washington to Freya.
so if you get any sort of like someone who believes in any little bit of mind control into a high power of office like that, the kinds of experiments and stuff they can conduct, it's endless. But anyways, yes, back on to what I really want to get into here. Charles Manson. So, I believe everybody kind of knows who Charles Manson is. He was a whack job. I mean,
Hmm.
in the 60s, he had the Manson family, and which was like a cult basically, and he convinced
God, I love cults.
he convinced these people to commit murder on his behalf pretty much, and they committed the Tate LaBianca murders. Um,
Well, so there was
along with
a
some others, there was 9 victims total. I believe, yeah, nine
Yeah.
victims
No.
total. So,
was it
and I want to go ahead, CJ.
so I just wanted to like his whole belief thing was literally based on a song by the Beatles.
Yes.
I mean, he literally. I mean, that's
Hell, yeah, yeah. The album Helter Skelter or whatever, isn't that it?
which, which, oddly enough, now this is not a proven thing or anything, but the CIA oftentimes uses music as a torture type technique. And I've oftentimes wondered, as you go through here, I wonder if they were using Helter Skelter like they use modern rock albums to imprint ideas and torture as like the CIA does nowadays, which we know they do. They oftentimes they like have a favorite track system they like to play, and Pantera and Godsmack are at the top of it um, whenever they're torturing citizens.
well,
So
that could be one of those things where like when you train a dog,
right,
like you give them a treat, or like say they have those clickers, right? Whenever you say do this, you click, they know like a treat's coming. So like
exactly.
what if the song was a foreshadow to something that was happening and he
Hmm.
took that and be like this is what's been programmed in me
Yep.
when this song happens and
And Tristan's about to
Yeah,
elaborate on
or
that.
even if I mean if they dose you up on LSD and put you in a room and they're just blaring, music,
Yep.
you're gonna associate something with that music. It
Yep.
may not, it may be good, it may be bad, and maybe they just tried a bunch of different albums and that's the one that made him click
Hmm.
or
say
something. I don't know,
unpopular
but
opinion, but I would probably would too if I had to listen to the Beatles nonstop.
yeah, absolutely. um, so yeah, Manson, um, in his early life, he he didn't have a good home life, didn't have a good upbringing, I guess. His father was kind of out of the picture. His mother was a prostitute, um, who was arrested several times. He witnessed it. I'm sure he witnessed some other things in her life. But anyways, Manson had a rough upbringing, I guess you could say. He was in trouble a lot. He was always in trouble for truancy and petty theft at school. He set his school on fire when at the age of 9.
Same.
Um, he was in and out of foster homes and stuff like that because his mother was also in jail a lot, stuff like that. So in 1951, October 1951, Manson was transferred to Natural Bridge Honor Camp, which is a minimum security institution, on a psychiatrist's recommendation. Notice I said psychiatrist.
Which psychiatrist does it say?
It does not say. It just
Okay.
says on a psychiatrist recommendation.
Okay.
Um, while he was in that camp, institution, whatever you want to call it, I guess it was kind of it's I don't know exactly what Natural Bridge Honor Camp is, but it seemed like kind of a place for like troubled boys.
Yeah, like a boys'
Um,
camp kind of thing.
yeah, but he was moved out of there, transferred out of there for several disciplinary offenses, three of which were involving homosexual acts. So he was known to
Okay.
be violent and aggressive and kind of try to put himself into those situations of, I guess, power, especially on boys.
Interesting.
But and this is all when he at the age of 20,
At the
because he
age of
turned
20?
21. Yeah, he turned 21 after he got moved to a maximum security uh, reformatory in Chillicothe, Ohio.
They actually just
So
I was reading about that Natural Bridge camp right now as you were talking about that. They actually just closed it like 5 years ago. It's stayed open all the way from then till now.
yeah, well, we'll get into something else that Manson's connected with that has stayed open for a very long time until recently. Um, but anyways, so when I'm getting down to this, I'm not going to go through the in-depthness of Manson's imprisonment and stuff, but he was in and out of jail a lot. He was arrested a lot. He was in prison a couple times. Um, but after his second imprisonment, which was in 1958, he started to get arrested and then released days later,
Right.
like for petty things, of course. I mean, fraud and petty theft and stuff like that. But the conspiracy behind all of this is what I'm trying to get to here is that while he was in prison his second time, he had been recruited in a sense by the CIA.
Mhm.
So in the 60s, the hippie movement began, and there was a large number of people that didn't like the government, didn't like the war that was going on in Vietnam, and the hippie movement was really the main force behind that. Think of today we have Antifa.
Mhm.
Back then it was kind of the hippie movement. Like they were the bad guys. They
Right.
were the ones that were, protesting and all that stuff. The government needed a way to make the hippie movement look bad, and Manson was that poster child.
Yeah.
They could recruit him and drug him, slip him LSD and stuff like that, release him from jail, let him walk free, let him do his normal crazy shit that he did. And since he was involved with the hippie movement, when they would activate him, or however you want to say, and he committed those murders or talked people into committing the murders, whatever, that would put a stain on the hippie movement and um, disenfranchise them, I guess is the way of putting
Yeah.
it. It would put a stain on the
Right.
hippie movement and
Paint them
make
in a negative light.
people around the world being like, people around the world would be like, oh, they're bad guys, because this is what they do.
Mhm. Yeah.
So yeah. But there was a um something that I mentioned earlier, one of the things that was open until that had to do with Manson. It was open until recently. And I can't see any mention of it on here, but I know it existed. There was a clinic. Um, I want to say it was called like New something, New Haven.
Yeah, is that the one that a couple of his female followers ended up in as well, and then released from?
Haight Ashbury. That's
Haight
the
Ashbury,
name.
yes, Haight Ashbury.
Yeah. Yeah, Haight Ashbury Medical Clinic is where Manson was known to go to. It was like a free, one of those free clinic type
Mhm.
things, and Manson was known to go there.
To see his PO,
Well,
right?
yeah, which is odd. You don't. Why
Yeah.
would you go to a clinic to see your parole officer? So, the also a lot of his followers went there as well. So, the conspiracy behind that is that he was being fed LSD
hmm
um, and other drugs probably while he was going to this clinic, and that the clinic was a cover up basically for the CIA giving him these drugs.
Right.
But yeah,
So that Haight Ashbury, and now the other part of Haight Ashbury, his P. What was his PO's name at Haight Ashbury? Do you remember what his name was?
oh no,
His PO has some really interesting things that go along with him. For instance, he actually okay. Now to wrap our heads around this, Leslie Van Houten.
I know that his PO was involved with the CIA or the government in some shape or form. I remember that.
Yeah, and the
That
crazy
Manson's
thing
parole
about
officer was like friends or something like that
Yeah.
with like the
And-
CIA director or the yeah,
and even ended up
something wild.
Keith Morrison. Keith Morrison is his name. So he was Manson's parole officer. He actually ended up for a short time adopting Manson's son with one of his followers. I don't. There was a weird situation where a lot of Manson's followers were women. They were younger women, impressionable teen girls. They would oftentimes come to his clinic.
Strays.
Yeah, strays.
Yeah.
They would oftentimes come to the Haight Ashbury clinic. I can't remember exactly the name, but to get abortions.
Yeah, Haight Ashbury.
Haight Ashbury, yeah. They would come to get abortions and things like that because it was a free medical clinic. And at one point in time, Leslie Van Houten, one of his followers, and another one of the females, I can't remember what her name was, actually ended up getting like a pretty significant case brought against them for domestic and like child endangerment. And Manson's parole officer and his parole officer's wife went to those two women's trial and testified on their behalf that they were good women and ended up adopting their kids and taking these kids who Manson fathered and these women had and bringing them into their home. Why the hell is Manson's parole officer adopting his kids? A lot of people think that that Keith Morrison actually might have kind of been a follower of Manson's, or that he was helping the CIA facilitate Manson to commit helter skelter, as he called it, and because as we all know, have you got into what helter skelter was yet?
No.
Do you want me to kind of you plan on doing it?
Yeah, go for it.
So, helter
Feel like I've
skelter
talked enough,
was
probably.
Manson's ideology that. So the late 60s, besides the hippie movement, we know we have another extremely significant problem in California at the time. We have the race riots, and we have the Black Panthers forming, okay? So Manson created this thought process, ideology, theology called helter skelter, okay? And it was that by committing the Tate murder, or the Tate and LaBiata murders, that he could pin those on the Black Panthers and then create a race war in which a race war that would destroy all of the United States. And he thought that the African American population would become victorious, and that him and his followers would emerge from their ranch to lead the African American population that had now beaten out the white population. And that's what he called Helter Skelter. It was kind of like an apocalypse. Crazy ass ideology. I mean, I don't even know how he comes up with this crap. Like, this is just like all over the place. He has to like incite like 10 things to get it to even happen. But now, whenever you were talking earlier about the CIA trying to use Manson to paint the hippie culture in bad light, there's a lot of conjecture and thought process on, did the CIA actually, was it the hippie culture that did they realize that he did that for the hippie culture, painted them in a bad light, and then he thought, well, maybe he can do that for the Black Panthers and these groups as well. So they were trying to let him commit those and make the Black Panthers a scapegoat for it, essentially, because that's what his plan was. So Helter Skelter was a crazy ideology. Crazy.
Yeah. See, Manson himself was a white supremacist, and
Well, he also claimed to be Jesus.
I mean, he's got a swastika tattooed on his forehead.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so his belief that what he was doing was that he was gonna pin that on the Black Panthers, basically, and start the race war. But he was being manipulated by the government into basically doing the same thing that he was trying to do, but for the hippie movement. I think is what was actually going on.
Yeah.
I mean, because he was just being dosed up on LSD, and I think
Sent
he
out
was
to do stuff.
definitely manipulated. Don't get me wrong, Manson's a douchebag.
Yeah.
And
Awful
he's
person.
A terrible person. Yeah, like the devil incarnate.
Mm-hmm.
But he definitely was manipulated in a sense by the government. I mean, they recruited him. They found him out. They were like, this dude is a bad dude. This is the guy. You know, he's already has these violent tendencies.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he raped a boy while he was in jail.
And we're skipping over a lot of, which for the sake of time, a lot of the shit that Manson did prior to this. Like, there was a time that Manson was actually running drugs for the CIA into Sinaloa. Like, actually retrieving the CIA's LSD from Mexican cartels, or the early versions of Mexican cartels, and moving them up into San Diego. Like, proven fact. It's crazy.
I hadn't gotten into that a whole lot. That's new to me.
Tom O'Neill actually wrote a book about the whole Manson drug
He
mule
wrote
thing.
another one.
Yeah.
I know he wrote Chaos, which is about like MK Ultra and Manson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I
he's
have no
got
idea
he's
more
got
about
another
that.
like thing about
Just out there, if for people who are listening, if you want to really deep dive into this stuff, listen to or you read however you get your books. Chaos.
Mhm.
It's a book by Tom O'Neill. It's about Manson and MK Ultra.
Yeah, and it's very good.
A couple of other famous subjects of MK Ultra would be Whitey Bulger. I don't know if you guys know who that is or not.
Which blows my mind.
He was a famous Boston crime boss, James Whitey Bulger. He was convicted of racketeering, extortion, murders, drug trafficking, all that fun stuff. He was a mob boss, pretty much, an Irish mob boss. But
yeah, he was convicted of 19 separate murders, but they think he's committed over 150.
Yeah,
is his count. Crazy.
Following Whitey Bulger's 2013 conviction, he wrote a 70-plus page letter, or wrote 70-plus prison letters to a juror named Jeanette Olar, um, explaining that he was manipulated by the CIA and forced into MK Ultra,
Mhm.
and that he was a subject of MK Ultra, and it basically rotted his mind, and caused him to commit murder.
Yeah. Like the thought process that was like it essentially erased the empathy um, concept in his mind, so he couldn't
Yeah.
empathize with anybody. Is what he was saying. It's wild.
Ted Kaczynski is also, I don't know if that one's confirmed or not, but Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, um, was also rumored to have been a part of MK Ultra. Uh, Rumored to have been a subject of that.
Yeah, that is confirmed. I just double checked on that.
It is.
He was
Yeah,
16 whenever he was in the. He was actually, and he is a model who wasn't. He was actually brought into MK Ultra when he was in college, as a college student, not as a prisoner. A lot of the MK Ultra people that we talk about are prisoners, but he was actually a college student.
Yeah, that's where they recruited a lot of their subjects, is because one, they were stuck there anyways, so they were easy to get a hold of, and two, the individuals that they were looking for were violent um, individuals mainly. If you want to manipulate someone into being violent and aggressive, then it's going to be easiest on you to find someone who already shows those kinds of tendencies. So,
Oh yeah.
if someone's mean to animals and murders animals or something like that, or is cruel to animals,
Mhm.
um, they're going to be easier to convince into hurting people. So, just to give the kind of a background on that. But yeah, and the CIA conducted. I mean, this was a wild time for the CIA. I just want to be. I want to step into the life of Alan Dulles for
Yeah.
just a couple years. I mean, because the CIA from 1950 to all the way up to like 1980,
Mhm.
or even further than that, honestly, up until like the 2000s, they've done some wild shit. I
Yeah.
mean,
Oh yeah.
1953, the Iranian coup, they toppled the Iranian government and established a 1954, the Guatemalan coup. They did the same thing.
Mhm.
And Alan Dulles was the dude behind both of those, the CIA director behind both of those. Um, Syria, we did
Mhm.
a there was a CIA backed coup. Indonesia, like, man, at this time
CIA was doing
period,
some wild stuff.
the Bay of Pigs.
Mhm. Yep.
I mean, everybody knows what that is. Um,
Contras.
yeah, yeah, Iran Contra. That was the 80s though, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was like 83.
Yeah.
Before we step
I
too far
fast
away
forwards
from
a little
this,
bit.
my favorite person who was a MK Ultra patient, confirmed MK Ultra patient, was actually an author, Ken Kesey. So I'm sure we have every single one of us heard of the Kubrick movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Okay. Or right now on Netflix is a show called Ratched, where it's in the same world, in the same hospital as One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is
I've
a.
seen Ratchet.
Have you seen Ratched? One Flew Over the
Hmm.
Cuckoo's Nest has shoot, what is his name? Same guy from The Shining. I would know his name if I wasn't trying to think of it. Jack Nicholson. Okay, so um, Ken Kesey actually wrote One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and his inspiration for that was his time in the MK Ultra project. and he actually wasn't a prisoner as well. He was a grad student at Stanford, and he unknowingly signed up for the project, and that kind of laid the groundwork for him writing One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and then us getting all those movies and things based around that. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I've seen Ratchet. It's a very good series on Netflix. If you like American Horror Story, it has serious American Horror Story vibes to it.
Yeah.
It's very good. I think it's got the same actors as well. I've never really watched American Horror Story a whole lot.
It's got Sarah Paulson in it. She's the main person. So do you want to?
Yeah,
we can kind of jump from MK Ultra, kind of leads almost into Iran Contra, but MK Ultra kind of started dying down in the 80s, and a lot of that was because Congress started figuring out about MK Ultra. There was a death. What was that feller's name that died? Was it George White, maybe? I can't remember exact name, but there was a guy who died who had some serious connections, who was dosed as part of MK Ultra. He was one of the scientists that was involved with the MK Ultra program, and he ended up jumping out of like a third-story window and dying while he was dosed. So the people that he was connected with said, "Hey, we need to investigate. There's no way this dude's going to jump out of a third-story building and kill himself." They investigate it and they figure out the CIA dosed him with LSD. So then Operation Midnight Climax starts coming to light, Operation Bluebird, Operation MK Ultra, and I'm sure if you're like us, you probably think the CIA was linked to a few other dirty things in the 60s. Maybe some JFK stuff, some things like that. So the CIA...
I was going to say, are you wanting to jump straight to Iran-Contra, or do you want to cover some earlier happenings first?
We can cover some earlier happenings if you want, but what I'm trying to say with this is the CIA, to appease Congress, said they were shutting down the MK Ultra project, just so Congress wouldn't dig more into what the CIA was doing, which some pretty, like we were talking about all these coups that they're orchestrating. And Iran Contra was just something that they literally got caught with their hands in the cookie jar on that one. And honestly, we'll probably talk about JFK at some point in time, or we might even talk about him today. But JFK is another thing where there was a lot of people that ended up on the investigation committee who were people who wanted JFK dead. So anything that came out of, I can't remember what exactly the committee was called. It was named after the senator who was in charge of the committee, but the congressional committee that investigated JFK's assassination. I have a hard time believing anything that came out of that committee. I want to say it started with an H, like the Harrison Committee or something.
The Warren Commission?
Warren Commission, yes, that's it, yeah. I have a hard time believing anything that came out of that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean... Okay, so before we get into JFK too deep, because we only have time to really cover either JFK or Iran-Contra, so would you like to go in chronological order, or do you want to stick with CIA operations versus CIA assassinations? Or how do you want to do this? Which one do you want to do? Flip a coin.
CJ? Decide,
we got time for one,
friend.
And we can do another one next episode.
Do you want to talk about Iran-Contra, or do you want to talk about JFK?
Do you want to go in chronological order? Or do you want to kind of put like items with like items?
You know what? Screw it. Let's just talk about JFK.
Let's
do it.
All right.
Well,
Chronological order it is then.
Why
No.
if I'm getting to make a decision, let's do Iran, because I think JFK is going to be a big one that can solo set its whole self. I think we could run a long time with just JFK.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, you're probably right. And I'm
yeah,
drunk, so I shouldn't
yeah.
make decisions right now.
Both, both of the Kennedys, as along with Martin Luther King.
Oh
We
God.
can kind of dive into those later. Okay, fine.
I just think it'd
Iran
be better.
Contra wins then.
Iran
Yeah,
Contra it
so.
is.
I'd say it'd be better. We wouldn't have to rush through it. I don't want to rush through JFK or any of that.
Okay, so let's pull a couple tabs up here. Give me 2 seconds. So we're gonna fast forward a little bit. Um, we've talked about MK Ultra and Operation Midnight Climax, the potential conspiracies behind those operations. Next, we're gonna fast forward just a little bit, and I'm sure Christian will probably be able to give you a little bit more background on Iran Contra itself. I'm not super detailed on that, but what I can do is kind of give you the setup for it. Mainly talking about one specific man in particular, and I don't know if anybody that's listening has ever watched the movie American Made, but that's kind of what I'm going to be giving the rundown for real quick. But American Made is a movie about a man named Barry Seal. Barry Seal was a pilot in the 80s who was um, hired by the CIA to take pictures, basically. So this is still in the cold. This is still during the Cold War. Um, we've shifted our focus from Asia, kind of, and now we're focusing heavily on South America. Communism is at a rise throughout all of South America, in Argentina, Venezuela, Honduras, Guatemala, tons of places.
Okay, sorry, I'm back.
Okay, I'm getting
Beer
into
run.
Barry Seal. Um, so Barry Seal was hired to fly down to um, what's the name? Colombia,
Nicaragua or Colombia? Yeah, Colombia.
Colombia. He was hired. Ooh, I gotta sneeze. Okay, I'm good. I think I'm good. Huh. He was hired to fly down to Colombia over the jungles to take pictures of the guerrilla fighters and their camps and stuff
Mhm.
like that down there for the CIA. Well, one day Barry Seal um, has to stop down there in Honduras, I believe, or
Mhm.
Ecuador, one of those
I
two.
think it was Honduras. Yeah.
Anyways, he has to stop in to get fuel, and he's approached um, by a man who gives him an offer to make a lot of money.
Mhm.
And that's when Barry Seal starts his career as a smuggler for the Medellin cartel. And that's when the cocaine business in America starts to explode.
Mhm.
Um, Barry Seal begins flying tons of cocaine from Colombia to the United States. And what he does is he flies like this little bush plane type thing.
Yeah.
And as he's flying over the swamps and the bayous of Louisiana and Arkansas, he starts shoving it out of the plane and it floats. So it
Mhm.
hits the bayous and floats up to the top and just sits there. And someone comes by on a boat and picks it up. And Barry Seal gets paid. So Barry does this for a long time. He gets hooked up with what's that dude's name?
Pablo Escobar.
The main guy that started all this. Pablo Escobar. He gets hooked up with Pablo Escobar. Um, they make a deal. They start working together. he basically owns the town of Mena, Arkansas. I mean, he opens up Mena, Arkansas is a pretty small town at this point. He opens up an airport and like 5 or 6 banks in the town of Mena,
Yeah.
all of them housing his money. Um, Curiously enough, who was the governor of Arkansas at this time? I'm asking you guys.
Would that be Bill Clinton?
It would be Bill Clinton.
Okay.
Old Billy is the governor of Arkansas at this time,
Mm-hmm.
and things like that don't really go unnoticed by a governor.
Yeah.
But anyways, so as Seal gets deeper and deeper into this life, he starts to get noticed by a couple more entities, and he ends up getting pinched by the American government
Mhm.
and flips and turns into an informant.
Yeah.
For the DEA and the CIA and the FBI. And they let him off the hook as long as he wears a wire, for one. And two, he has to start bringing, because remember, we're still fighting communism at this time.
Yeah.
In Colombia, Guatemala, places like that, there was guerrilla fighters that were anti-communist, and there was ones that were communists. Well, obviously, we want the ones that are anti-communist to win.
Right.
So we started giving Barry Seal and tons of other pilots, it wasn't just him, there was tons of other ones, weapons to fly down to South America to trade for drugs to bring back up to the United States. And we were okay with this because the only way that those people could take our guns and they could afford to buy our guns was if we were selling their cocaine for them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how that whole system worked, basically. We were supplying rebels in South America with weapons, but in turn, we had to sell their drugs for them. I mean,
Right.
And that's how the cocaine industry in the United States really blew up. Is
The CIA trading guns
through,
for drugs.
Yeah, through the government. I mean, the government caused it 100%.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's crazy. I
I'll let you
can't
dive into
believe that.
because it spreads out from there into a web of insanity.
I just can't believe that. One, we live in a country today where it is a proven fact that the Central Intelligence Agency sold our citizens cocaine to fund South American coups. And the same CIA is still in operation today with the same leadership and the same operatives. Now, I understand that there's certain mission needs. There's certain objectives that we have to meet. And we don't want to lose our political sphere or our worldly sphere presence that we have. But at the same time, I mean, they're selling freaking cocaine to U.S. citizens.
The U.S. knows how to
Yeah,
party.
I mean,
huh?
you just got to think about it. Like,
Yeah.
Go ahead, CJ. Sorry.
That's all I had to say. Is the U.S.
trying-
has they know how to party.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, you just got to think of it like the state of the world back then was red versus blue,
Yep.
democracy versus communism. And communism was spreading fast because it's an easy idea to sell. I mean,
Mhm.
look at what's
Yeah.
happening in the world right now. Everybody loves communism right now.
Yeah.
But
Oh, yeah.
What's the big thing right now too, right? Is fascism versus socialism.
Yep.
And if you look at it, either side really, it's the
yeah, they're
extreme.
both horrible. They're basically
Yeah.
the same damn thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that old red
Extremism
versus
in any
blue,
form
you know.
is bad.
Yeah.
If you go far enough on either side, you end up back on the other side.
Yeah.
It's really
It's more of a globe. It's more of a circle. Like you start off here and you work so far around that you're like, hold on, you're literally the same thing.
hmm
It's crazy.
Mhm. But yeah, we're just trying to fight the spread of communism any way we can back then. And that's the name of the game. That was what it was all about. And I mean, if you want to try to put it in today's terms, maybe not so much now. Now it's calmed down a lot.
Mhm.
But if you think back to like 2000 and think back to like I'm just gonna pick a random 2008.
Yeah.
Think back to 2008. We were all still super young in 2008. I was
Yeah.
only 11 years old. But I remember the setting of the world back then.
Right.
And in 2008, if the president would have came out, if Obama himself, the day he was elected, would have came out and said, "We're going to sell." There's this Christian. I'm not even going to say Christian. I want to say there's this group of people in Iraq
Mhm.
that hate the Taliban and want to fight and kill the Taliban and Al Qaeda. We're going to sell them weapons so that we can stop the spread of radical
Mhm.
Islam. We would have been all for it.
I mean, we did it though.
Exactly. We did do it.
We did do it.
We've done it plenty of times.
I mean,
With
hell,
Syria
we took
and,
Afghan poppies, heroin
Libya.
poppies.
and tons of other places.
Yeah.
you'd think
So
after
yeah,
enough time
I mean,
we
it's the same thing.
would realize like, hey, every time we do this, it's typically doesn't go good for us.
Yeah, it's the same shit. We're always trying to be like a world police force and
Mhm.
stop the spread of ideas that we don't agree with.
Yep.
And while I do, in a sense, agree with that, communism's bad shit, and we need to try to stop it. Fascism is bad shit, and we did stop it.
Yep.
Hitler, we shut that shit down. Radical Islam is bad. Radical Christian ideas are bad. Radical Jewish ideas are bad. Radical
Buddhist.
Norse
Right? Yeah, I was to
ideas
say, I imagine
Buddhist.
radical
are bad.
Buddhists are
Yeah.
probably bad.
The yoga
Yeah.
that's gone to an extreme. Okay, we've got to ring that in.
Yeah.
You ever been beat up by a monk?
Radical ideas of any sorts are bad. I mean, if you're being willing to fight for your ideas is one thing. Being willing to murder and commit genocide for your ideas is a completely different thing. So, I forgot where I was even going with this. I just got off.
I think you were just going on like
again.
the awful shit that we do, that our country's done to fight ideas.
Oh, yeah. So that's the thing, is that we're always about fighting these ideas and stuff like that. And yeah, being the world police force, whatever, stopping the bad guy is what kind of America's all about, you know? But at the same
America!
time, it's like, man, there's a limit. Like there's a limit. We need to worry about ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, we need to worry about communism not leaking into our system, which it
Right.
has.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother episode we can get into another time. Is communist sleeper agents and stuff like that. But I don't know. That's just.
Well,
I'm
I mean,
totally getting
you're
off subject
completely
here.
right. No, but
Iran
you're right.
Contra. You go.
No, I mean the things that our country has done, sidebarring Iran Contra, the things that our country has done in the name of singularly fighting communism. Granted, I understand we got to do dirty shit to beat dirty shit. Okay, I understand that, but
You have to cross
Absolutely.
the line to make sure that the line is still there.
right, but
There's no such
we've
thing as a fair fight.
literally founded the Mujahideen that became Taliban. We, as a
That's a
country,
whole nother mess.
sent CIA operatives to Afghanistan. We trained, funded, and supplied the Mujahideen. The Mujahideen becomes the Taliban. No ifs, ands, or buts about that. They literally become the Taliban. because we wanted them
Yeah,
to fight
since-
the Russians.
Yeah, since 1970, every entity that we have fought on the planet, we have created through a vacuum
Mhm.
or through
We still do it.
funding of some sorts of our own.
Libya is a lawless state right now because just let them go do whatever. Al Qaeda. We created Al Qaeda whenever we took out Iraq. But back to Iran Contra. Sorry, I'm a little drunk. Iran Contra.
Same.
Iran Contra.
Can't feel my face.
I don't understand how Reagan didn't get impeached over Iran Contra. I literally don't
Because
understand.
he was
it.
loved.
Yeah,
He was loved.
I mean, he
That
was
man
literally.
was worshipped.
It says that he wasn't actually. He talked about how he was for it and he supported it, but he didn't actually sign off on it. Like, there's no
Oh,
proof
bullshit.
that he actually signed off on it. Reagan.
So, for those who don't know, what Iran Contra is,
President, man.
okay? So, was it? I'm sorry, I'm too drunk. Was it Nicaragua that the Contras were fighting in? Let me look here.
Oh, dude, I thought you
yes,
had all
yes.
this.
Yeah,
loaded
Nicaragua,
up,
okay.
'cause I don't.
So I got it. It's here. I got to process it. So the Contras were an anti-communist, anti-Marxist group out of Nicaragua. Oh my God, Nicaragua. Sorry, I'm deteriorating fast. Out of Nicaragua, they were actually called the Nicaraguan Democratic Force. Okay, and they were fighting communism in South America. Now, it's literally one of the biggest concerns of the 70s and 80s is fighting drugs in South America and fighting communism in South America. Okay? So, Reagan tries to get Congress to fund the Contras. Reagan tries to get them to fund the Contras, and then at that point in time, Congress says, this is like 79, Congress says, no, ain't no way in hell we're giving them money. And some time goes by, and they funnel them some money, and they get them a couple million here and there. Let me pull up my notes, because I have the exact money, how much they actually ended up getting. But essentially,
Like 12
Reagan...
million or some shit like that.
Yeah, like 12 million was the original. Okay. Now, where Iran
Plus
comes
a couple
into
million
this,
from other places.
yes, because they actually got like the Taiwan. They got the Taiwanese government to donate $1 million to the Contras. I don't know how they were doing this crap, but so essentially the CIA is just running around asking countries for donations to the Contras to fight communism. Okay, so something very interesting happens in like 82, I think. I guess it's the precursor to Hezbollah. They're an Iranian-backed terrorist group. Takes hostage a plane that has some American passengers on there.
I don't think
Okay.
it was a precursor to Hezbollah. I think it was just.
Was it Hezbollah? Was it? Because that would have
Or
been the early days.
Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps.
Yeah. So I mean that's Hezbollah essentially. That's what they are now.
Yeah, same thing.
Which, if you know anything about Hezbollah, they're atrocious. I mean, the things they do are awful, 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 awful stuff. All targeted at. I don't want to disenfranchise any part of our audience, but I mean, everybody knows the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Whereas I'm not going to sit down and say one side's better than the other. I'm going to sit down and say Hezbollah is doing awful things in name of that conflict, and really doing some bad stuff. But they took this plane hostage, and Reagan ends up negotiating which we don't negotiate with terrorists, he says, and then he goes and negotiates paying Iran $30 million to facilitate the release of these prisoners, okay? These American citizens that were taken capture in this airline. Well, Iran actually only ends up with about $12 million. The other $18 million ends up getting funneled back to the Contras in Nicaragua. And they don't have anything to do with this. They didn't release these prisoners, nothing. So essentially, the CIA with, he claims to not, but there's no way he didn't, the nod from Reagan, essentially back-channeled $18 million that was supposed to go to Iran in exchange for the release of U.S. prisoners to the Contras to fight communism in the South. And it is just mind-boggling that, one, Reagan said he would not negotiate with terrorists. Okay, and then he negotiated with terrorists. Two, he agrees to give Iran $30 million for the freedom of these U.S. individuals, and then he only gives them 12 and gives the other 18 to the Contras. So that's telling me that he didn't really care about those citizens. He just saw it as a tunnel to get his money to South America. And I mean, if I honestly, I'm a little too far gone to get way too far into the Contra situation, but trust me on this, it was just a bad botched deal. It's really a great one to read about. The guys that the Contras were fighting were the Sandinatias, yeah. So if you want to see how the CIA has really screwed our government over, go read about the Iran-Contra deal. And
So basically, what I'm picking up, because I don't know much about Iran-Contra, what I'm picking up on is that they used the prisoners
yeah,
as a cover story
yes,
to be able to just slip money to the Contras.
yes.
Because, I mean, people probably would have been pretty upset if we were using their tax dollars to slip to.
And I mean, $18 million
guerrilla fighters
doesn't
in
seem like a whole
Nicaragua.
lot of money right now, but I mean, that's probably in today's money anywhere from $70 to $100 million. I'm not.
This was in the 80s. It was a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah, so I mean, that's $70 to $100 million nowadays. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
significant amount of money to be giving to someone who's selling drugs in the United States. Because let's circle back to that. The Contras were trafficking cocaine into the United States. So,
Yeah, they got to fund their war somehow, and
Yeah.
drugs is the best way to do that, honestly. I mean, that's how every single terrorist organization in Afghanistan has funded their wars, basically, is through poppy and
Mhm.
heroin.
oh yes,
Opium.
oh yeah. Another person,
But-
if you're interested in Iran Contra now, and you're like, well, what Reagan screw up there? Another person to look up is Manuel Noriega. He was one of the big players in Iran Contra, and he was big in smuggling the support. He was actually a Panamanian politician and military officer. If you know, Panama and Nicaragua are literally right there next to each other.
So,
He's
I've
another
heard
one
of
to look up.
Noriega before.
Yeah.
I know he was a big deal in something.
Yeah, he's big in the Iran Contra affair.
And also, we weren't just like a lot of people think, oh, we funded these people. We just gave them the money so they could buy a couple AK-47s.
No.
No, we were selling them tow missiles
Mhm.
and
Yep.
things of that nature, like legit weaponry.
Yes. Yeah,
50
not
caliber
stuff that you
machine
can buy
guns,
on grabagun.com.
Anti-tank missiles.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't just that we were selling them knockoff Russian AKs.
Yeah.
It was legit stuff, legit firepower.
And another thing that I feel like I'm just really bashing our government today. I love the United States of America, just so everybody knows this. Absolutely love the US of A. I just think that we've gone wrong somewhere in the past 40, 50 years, even maybe 70, in allowing our government to do things that they shouldn't do. But
Give me 1 second. Let me do some math here, and I'll tell you exactly how many years we have went wrong.
give me like 1948.
243. Because we've been around for 244. Just kidding.
Yeah. No, I mean,
We had a good run.
well, yeah, we had a good
About
run
6
there.
years.
For while George Washington was in charge. After that, it kind of just kind of petered out after that. But I mean,
Once Lincoln takes office, that guy was a don't get me wrong, freed the slaves. One good thing he did.
Yeah.
The rest of it, that dude was an awful person.
If Hitler would have
That's
won,
another
and
conspiracy we can get
Lincoln's a
into.
dick. Got it.
I'm just saying, Lincoln was not that good of a dude. Like, everybody's like, oh, he freed the slaves. Yeah, he did. Only because he wanted to win the war.
Yeah. It was literally, he
And that's
literally
a
used it
quote.
as his
That's a
last
Lincoln quote.
possible thing. Go ahead, say the
That's
quote.
a
Yeah.
Lincoln quote is, if I could end this war without freeing the slaves, I would. Now, I'm paraphrasing because I'm drunk, and I don't feel like Googling right now. So, but you people out there listening can dig into that, and you can learn that Lincoln was kind of a douchebag, and he was also gay. So,
And if you want someone to really look up to in the whole window of the Confederacy, okay, I'm going to give you possibly one of the greatest guys in Civil War history, and that's Newton Knight. Do you guys know who Newton Knight is? Newton Knight, he was a Confederate soldier. He ended up actually revolting against the Confederacy and creating what was called the Free State of Jones. And it was like these multiple counties in Mississippi where he created his own government, where everybody was equal, everybody was treated the same, and everybody hated the federal government, no matter which federal government it was.
is
Whether
that
it was the Confederate States of
is that the
America.
movie?
With
Is it the
Matthew
movie
McConaughey?
With Matthew McConaughey.
Yes, he did a movie about it. Yeah. Beautiful.
There you go.
We probably
All
better
right.
wind this down because we're getting a little winded here.
Yeah,
Um,
it's getting out of hand.
I'm glad. I'm
So
glad I'm not
we
the one that's gonna have a
this
misquote.
week, I'm just saying, we went into this week just wanting to kind of deep dive on some CIA operations, and as you can tell, we've went out of pocket a little bit, and that's mainly because I continued to drink instead of
Same.
stopping myself.
Same.
So, but yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed it, and thanks for coming. Thanks for listening. Thank you guys for joining me again this week. Ask the questions, question the answers, and go down the rabbit hole.
Real quick before we go, CJ, do you have an ad plug for me? Can
Well,
you give me
so
an
I was-
ad check?
What I was gonna ask was, you guys had mentioned that this podcast got a little weird.
Well, they all get weird.
Is that a little thread weird?
It's thread weirdish, yeah.
Threadweird.com, promo code rabbit hole for 10% off your order.
I haven't got my butt
this
butt
episode.
stuff clock in yet, but I'm really excited about it. All right, gentlemen, thank you. If anybody's interested, I'm thinking about starting a cult in the near future, so keep that in mind.
Allegedly.
I'll be looking for volunteers on that front. Thank you all
Allegedly.
for listening, and have a great night.